When driving south on Interstate 580, you can briefly see this racetrack before it disappears behind a hill. Its fences are covered in graffiti, the land surrounding is uncared for, and it has been closed since 2008. It is located in the Central Valley of California at the edge of Alameda County, just 10 miles from where I grew up. Ever since I was young, this racetrack has caught my eye, and I've had a very long curiosity to understand its history. But little did I know the stain that it had left on our society. It wasn't until I was a senior in high school when I would learn that on December 6, 1969, the Altamont Speedway was the location of a massive rock concert hosted by the Rolling Stones and the Grateful Dead. Some dreamed that it would be Woodstock in the West. But if this was such a massive concert that was compared to Woodstock, and I only grew up 10 miles away, how would I not heard of it? And how did legendary bands like Santana, the Rolling Stones, and the Grateful Dead end up on a countryside racetrack in the middle of the Central Valley? How did a day that was supposed to end up like this result in this? This is the story of Altamont. In the 1960s, the Rolling Stones were not who we know them to be today. In their early days, they spent much of their time covering blues tracks, but as music began to change, the Rolling Stones did too. By the mid-1960s, they started to write their own music, which leaned more towards rock and pop rock music. As their fame began to grow, they acquired a new manager, new recording labels, and their recreational drug use was continually getting them in trouble with authorities. By 1967, their manager Alan Klein was stealing all of the band's profits, and feuds between band members started to rise. On stage, Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones were gods, but behind the scenes, they were really trying to stay afloat. Their solution? Host an American tour and get a film crew to create a documentary of the month-long event. Simultaneously, over in California, around 1965, the San Francisco sound started to arise. Deeply ingrained with the city's counterculture, Haight-Ashbury bands like the Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane, and Santana were at the core of the psychedelic rock movement. The San Francisco music scene was about the sharing of love and music, and it was not uncommon for bands to play free impromptu concerts in the streets of San Francisco or in the fields of Golden Gate Park. Most people don't know that the San Francisco sound is actually what inspired the 1969 Aquarian Exposition 3 Days of Peace and Music Festival, or better known as Woodstock. Woodstock took 8 months of preparation and was originally planned to be a profit-making venture. Before the August event, they sold 186,000 tickets at $18 apiece, and they advertised that if you showed up the day of the event, you can actually get a ticket for $24. The only reason why Woodstock turned into a free concert is because twice as many people showed up to the event than was expected, and there just wasn't enough tickets or security or infrastructure to manage crowds the size of 400 to 500,000 people. Now, Woodstock had its fair share of problems, but it is regarded in history as a victory of peace and love. Woodstock was the perfect summary to the hippie mantra: peace, love, and music. Those who were there wanted to relive the experience as much as they could, and those who weren't dreamed of what it would be like. As the 60s drew to a close, the counterculture and the free spirit generation wanted to cling to what they could. Among those people were Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones. Just before the Rolling Stones left to come to the United States, Grateful Dead manager Rock Scully met in England with Rolling Stones guitarist Keith Richards to propose that they partner with Haight-Ashbury bands and host a free concert in San Francisco. Scully knew that concerts in Golden Gate Park had been a huge success, and the plan seemed foolproof to the both of them. The idea was that the concert would wrap up the Rolling Stones' 1969 American tour and bring the Stones closer to the counterculture. By November of 1969, after seeing the success of Woodstock, Mick Jagger just couldn't keep quiet.
We are doing a free concert in San Francisco on December 6th.
And as a result, the city of San Francisco canceled its permits because they knew they did not have the infrastructure to support the crowds the size of Woodstock. With the concert quickly approaching, Sears Point Raceway up in Sonoma agreed to host the event, but on the condition that they received $100,000 up front and would receive a percentage of the revenues made from the Rolling Stones documentary. Still without any money, the Rolling Stones backed out of the deal just 2 days before the concert was supposed to start.
This has been building up for a long time. Off and on, off and on.
Dick Carter's on the line. He's offering us a speedway at Altamont.
And he promised that there would be space for 200,000 people. As a result, crews had to tear everything down at Sears Point and drive 80 miles to Altamont. There were less than 36 hours to get the stage constructed, lights and sound functioning, and to spread the news of the third location change.
The Rolling Stones free concert is going to be on tomorrow at the Altamont Speedway.
When the crews arrived at the raceway, it was not what they had been told it would be. In Sonoma, the stage was on top of a hill, projecting down into a bowl, so a short 4-foot stage would have been appropriate for the venue as the bands would be safe from the massive crowd. Altamont was quite the opposite. The 4-foot stage would be placed at the bottom of the surrounding hills, leaving the stage completely exposed and unprotected. Because of the Rolling Stones' past and their relationship with formal authorities, Mick Jagger hated police, and he did not want any official police security to be present at the event whatsoever. But they knew that they needed protection and they knew that they needed security, and the Rolling Stones knew the Grateful Dead had a close connection with the Hells Angels motorcycle gang. So the Stones offered to pay the Angels to guard the short stage for $500 worth of beer. An estimate of 300,000 people showed up at Altamont, 250,000 more people than the small valley could hold. The day would include sets from Santana, Jefferson Airplane, the Flying Burrito Brothers, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, the Grateful Dead, and the Rolling Stones. As the hills began to fill in with people, hard drugs, marijuana, and laced jugs of wine were openly shared amongst the crowd. Most of the people there were unaware of the drugs and alcohol that they had consumed, so as the bad acid trips spread across the valley, the day grew more and more grotesque. Now, from the moment the Hells Angels arrived, they were extremely violent, and it increased as the day went on, and they began to consume more and more alcohol and hard drugs. They crowded the stage and continuously caused problems for fans and the bands. They were starting fights, beating people with pool cues and metal pipes, and at one point, lead singer of the Jefferson Airplane, Marty Balin, jumped off the stage to break up a fight and was knocked out by the Hells Angels.
Hey man, I'd like to mention that the Hells Angels just smashed Marty Balin in the face and knocked him out for a bit. I'd like to thank you for that.
The increased violence resulted in the decision for the Grateful Dead to leave Altamont and not play at all. By nightfall, the Rolling Stones finally came out to perform, and the moment Mick Jagger was seen by the fans, they immediately rushed the short stage, and the violent pushing and shoving continued, and there was really nothing anyone could do. Just 3 songs into their set, Mick Jagger had to stop playing due to the numerous fights in front of the stage.
Everybody be cool now, come on.
But it was just 4 songs later during Under My Thumb where the reputation of Altamont would forever be stained. Captured on film, the murder of 18-year-old concertgoer Meredith Hunter. In Hunter's attempt to get a better view of the stage by climbing on a speaker, he was quickly yanked off by a Hells Angel. And after a few more violent blows from the Angel, you can see Hunter come into the camera's frame. As a crowd quickly spread around him, 21-year-old Hells Angel Alan Pissarro draws his knife, and you can see him stab Hunter in the back a total of 4 times. We lose sight of the following events.
Yeah, he pulled out a gun. No?
He did?
Yeah, the Hells Angels took the gun away from him. They proceeded to put him down on the ground and start kicking him. And he has a couple stab wounds in his back and one over his ear. Got here, the doctor checked him out, and that was it.
Pronounced him dead as a
In the coming days, everyone would soon learn about the tragedies that happened at Altamont. And the people that were there quickly wanted to forget about it. The bands that were in attendance did not want to take accountability for the disorder and chaos of the day, and the Hells Angels definitely did not want to be held accountable for being the security force at the event. But this is the part that I think is most important. Altamont may be one of rock's darkest days, but it's often referred to as the day the music died. I don't think that's true. It didn't kill rock music, it just changed it. And I don't think the Rolling Stones would be who they are today if Altamont didn't happen. They realized they weren't invincible, and bad things could happen to them and those around them. It brought them back to their roots, and it made them realize why they were making music and who they were making music for. And we got a great band because of it. So, as the 50th anniversary of Altamont approaches this December 6th, I think it's important that we remember the day. We remember Meredith Hunter and the tragedy and chaos. But I also think it's important that we remember what the day was supposed to be: the joy, the happiness, and the coming together of a generation.